They called him a criminal. The whispers followed him everywhere, down the street, into the corner store, even as he sat quietly on his own porch. Parents pulled their children close, neighbors locked their doors a little tighter, and strangers stared at him like danger itself had walked by. To them, Marcus was just another ex-convict who had returned to a neighborhood that no longer trusted him. His name was dragged through conversations like poison, his shadow treated like a threat. The police had his face memorized. The shopkeepers watched him with suspicious eyes, and the children who once admired him as a local basketball hero now crossed the street when he passed, but none of them knew the truth. None of them knew the fire he had walked through. None of them knew that the very man they branded as criminal had once saved lives, more than they could count. The story they thought they knew was a lie. The truth was hidden in his past, locked away, waiting for the day it would finally come to light. And when it did, the same people who judged him would be forced to ask themselves one question. How do you treat a man when the truth changes everything? Marcus grew up in a working-class neighborhood where struggle was the daily language. His mother worked double shifts at the hospital. His father left when he was 8, and Marcus became the silent protector of his younger sister, Lila. He wasn't perfect, but he had dreams, big ones. Basketball was his escape. On the court, Marcus was magic, a local legend in the making. By his senior year of high school, recruiters whispered his name, and scouts scribbled notes every time he touched the ball. But life has a way of turning bright paths into broken roads. One night after practice, Marcus was walking home when he witnessed something that would change his life forever. A robbery gone wrong at a small convenience store. A masked man pulled a gun on the clerk, and Marcus, with nothing but instinct, stepped in. The struggle was quick, violent, and messy. The gun went off. The police arrived within minutes. They didn't see a young man trying to stop a crime. They saw a black teenager standing over a bleeding victim with a gun in his hand. The robber escaped. Marcus was arrested. The headlines didn't call him a hero. They didn't even call him a suspect. They called him a criminal. He was sentenced to 10 years behind bars for armed robbery, a crime he didn't commit. His dreams of a scholarship, a future in basketball, a better life for his family, all vanished overnight. Prison changed him, not because it hardened him, but because it revealed how cruel the world could be to those who didn't have power or privilege. Still, Marcus carried himself with quiet dignity, refusing to let the injustice break him. He read every book he could find, worked out every day, and wrote letters to Lila, reminding her to stay in school and never give up. By the time he was released, Marcus was no longer the bright-eyed teen with dreams of NBA stardom. He was a man carrying the weight of a label he could never seem to shake. Criminal. And the world outside? It was not waiting with open arms. Freedom didn't feel like freedom for Marcus. Everywhere he turned, his past trailed him like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Employers looked at his application and shook their heads before he even left the room. "We'll call you back," they said, but the phone never rang. The neighborhood he came back to had changed. New families, new faces, but the same old whispers. "Don't go near him. That's Marcus. The criminal." Even Lila, now a young woman studying law, could see the toll it was taking. "Marcus," she said one night, "you can't let them define you. You're not what they say." But Marcus wasn't so sure. Every time he walked into a store, the cashier's eyes locked onto him, suspicious, waiting for him to make the wrong move. Every time a police car slowed down beside him, his stomach knotted with dread, knowing they didn't see a man. They saw a walking record. Then came the day that would bring everything to the surface. It was a Saturday afternoon. Marcus had gone into the local hardware store to buy tools for repairing his mother's old porch swing. He picked up sandpaper, nails, and a small can of paint. Simple things. Everyday things. But when he reached the counter, the cashier's voice trembled. Is this cash or card?" Her hand hovered nervously near the phone. 2 officers walked in, and their eyes landed directly on Marcus. One of them, Officer Reynolds, smirked like he had been waiting for this moment. "Look who it is." Marcus Williams. Marcus froze. "Shopping for supplies, huh? Or planning your next job?" Reynolds said, loud enough for the other customers to hear. Murmurs filled the store. Heads turned. All Marcus could feel was the heavy sting of judgment pressing down on him. "I'm just buying tools," Marcus said quietly. "Sure you are," Reynolds sneered. "Empty your pockets." Marcus obeyed. Keys, wallet, a folded receipt from another store, nothing more. But it didn't matter. They called him a thief anyway. The officers pushed him against the counter, handcuffs clicking shut around his wrists. The little boy standing in line stared at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. That was the moment Marcus felt his dignity slip away. They called him a criminal again, and this time it felt like the world believed it more than ever. But what no one knew was that the truth about Marcus's past, the real story, was about to break free. And when it did, the same people who had branded him as guilty would be forced to see him in a light they never expected. The news spread fast. Local ex-con arrested again. Marcus sat in the small holding cell, staring at the cold concrete floor, when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. The cell door creaked open. It was Lila, but she wasn't just his sister anymore. She was a young attorney, and she had come armed with more than just words. "Marcus," she said firmly, "they can't keep doing this to you. I've found something." From her bag, she pulled out a folder. Inside were documents she had spent years digging for. Old court files, witness statements, police reports. And buried deep within them was the piece of evidence no one had ever revealed. The gun from that night, 10 years ago, had fingerprints on it. But they weren't Marcus's. They belonged to the real robber. The case had been sloppy, rushed, and drenched in bias. Marcus was the easy target, a young black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the system had taken the easy way out. "This proves it," Lila said, her voice trembling with both anger and triumph. "You were innocent all along." Marcus couldn't breathe. 10 years of pain, humiliation, and broken dreams, all because no one had cared to look closer. The next morning, Lila stood before the judge, her voice strong and unwavering. She presented the evidence piece by piece, tearing down the old case brick by brick, and then the words Marcus thought he'd never hear again finally came. "Marcus Williams, your conviction is overturned. You are hereby cleared of all charges." Gasps filled the courtroom. Marcus closed his eyes, tears running freely down his face. For the first time in over a decade, he wasn't a criminal. He was free. But the story didn't end there. Because outside those courthouse doors stood reporters, neighbors, police officers, and townspeople who had judged him all his life. And when Marcus stepped into the sunlight, holding his sister's hand, the truth about his past spread faster than the lies ever had. The same community that once crossed the street to avoid him now struggled to look him in the eye. The grocery clerk who had once followed him down every aisle whispered, I'm sorry." The parents who had pulled their kids away now stood silently, ashamed. Even Officer Reynolds, the man who had humiliated Marcus in front of everyone, kept his distance, his smirk replaced by silence. But Marcus didn't need their apologies. What he needed, what he wanted, was to live again. He reopened the old basketball court in the neighborhood, the one where kids once gathered to watch him play. He patched the broken nets, repainted the lines, and soon the court came alive again with laughter, sweat, and dreams. The kids who once feared him now saw him as a mentor. Marcus taught them more than how to shoot or dribble. He taught them resilience. He taught them not to give up when the world tried to define them. And slowly the whispers changed. They called him a criminal. People said, but he turned out to be the strongest man this neighborhood has ever known. For Marcus, dignity wasn't restored by an apology or even a legal document. It was restored by the way he chose to rise above the hate, the fear, and the injustice. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the court in gold, Marcus sat on the bleachers with Lila. "You saved me," he told her. "No," she smiled. "You saved yourself. I just helped the world see it." That night, as he walked home, neighbors greeted him not with fear but with respect. Because the truth about his past had changed everything. And Marcus knew finally that he wasn't just free from prison, he was free from the chains of judgment. And what would you do if the world called you a criminal? But the truth proved you were a hero.